6 days after high school graduation, I'm 18 years old. I leave home to go to college. In the 38 years since moving out, I rarely spend more than an hour or two in my parents' home. Then 4 years ago, my sister's daughter comes to live with me. She is 11. It's not an easy time for either of us. I suspect that her coming to live with me will thrust me back into contact with my parents, and that all the things I've left behind will come flooding back. They do. My niece is now 16 and having a hard time. So am I. One of the things that makes this time especially hard is that I have a bad habit of absorbing other people's emotions until they become too much to bear. Then I cut those people out of my life or distance myself from them, but I can't cut my niece out of my life. And sometimes I confuse her emotions with mine because they bring me right back to my own difficult teen years. If you knew me back then, you might not have known I was having any kind of difficulty. That's because in order to survive the trauma in my family, I developed very effective coping mechanisms that belie the abuse, the heartbreak, and the violence. I dissociate. I go blank in the face of abuse, whether it's directed at me or someone else. The great thing about that is that I rarely ever panic. When things get tough, I remain calm. When the car slides on the ice, I can calmly bring it back right. Also, I learned how to be good enough to get away with being very bad. I'm good in school. I know all the answers. I raise my hand a lot. I love doing the work, and I love being recognized for being smart. I never want to get in trouble. But in 4th grade, Vicki Shear and I get in trouble for running around the classroom. The teacher calls us to the front where she spanks us with her hand on our behinds. Then in 8th grade, I'm caught skipping school with a bunch of other kids from my neighborhood. We are each given 3 licks from Mr. Stockham's paddle. After that, I never get in trouble again. Well, I don't get caught. In high school, I'm one of those kids that others love to hate. I have it pretty together, despite the trauma at home. I am having a good time. These are glory days. I am the model of good behavior in the classroom, except for one day in Mr. Rapp's class in 11th grade. I'm rolling joints in the back of the room to sell at lunch. I'm not racing to find a word in the dictionary. The exercise is stupid. I lose the race. I take the dictionary up to the front of the room. I'm headed back to my seat. I hear my name booming out, McCoy. I turn, and the dictionary hits me in the chest, knocks the wind out of me. But mostly, I'm a good test taker. I have the leading role in the school musical. I hold school records in the 100 and 220. I run against the boys. I'm going to college. When I talk about it and say I will be a veterinarian, a lawyer, the president someday, my dad says I'll be pregnant and married before I get out of high school. I'll show him. But he's not watching. As long as no one complains about me, I'm home in time, and the police are not at the door, no one is watching. I do what I please. I get away with doing drugs, even stealing them from my mother, and buying and selling marijuana, and very memorably something that was being called crystal tea. I get away with having sex starting in 8th grade with my very pure and very sweet 16-year-old boyfriend in his white Chevy van. I enjoy drinking, stealing, then watering down the Seagram 7 my parents keep not very well hidden in the cupboard. I get away with all of this by living by a few simple rules. I take responsibility. In exchange for my freedom, I cook meals, do dishes, and when I turn 16, I take the laundry to the laundromat, buy groceries, and anything else that is needed. Both my parents have full-time jobs. They don't have time for this. My friends feel sorry for me, always having to do so much, but I see things differently. I have my own car. As long as I call to say I'll be late, I can stay out as long as I want. One of my most important rules is one crime at a time. If you're drinking in the car, don't speed or run stop signs. You hear that? If you're transporting a pound of weed, don't drink in the car. One crime at a time keeps me from getting caught. I care just enough to avoid detection. I can be as bad as I want to be, but don't get caught. Another rule is to not show anger toward my parents. Better to take it, whatever it might be, than to get angry. That could only end badly with physical consequences, or even worse, restriction of my many very important activities. Don't get caught. Care just enough to avoid detection. Be as bad as you want to be, but don't get caught. This all works out well enough. I survive my youth and even thrive, but it doesn't work out so well for me as an adult. I still have big trouble expressing anger. I can disengage from my feelings altogether. I remain good at pretending everything is okay. You want me with you if things get tough. I can stay calm under fire in a foxhole. It might come to that. But a lifetime of pretending has a price. I have difficulty speaking up for myself. I never feel at home anywhere. Years of therapy had me convinced that I was okay anyway. I was going to be fine until my niece came to live with me. A teenager with a dead mother, an unknown father, and the kind of trauma that triggers all of mine. It's certainly not her fault. Her mother is dead, her father is unknown, and she was raised by the same dysfunctional parents who raised me, then handed off to me when adolescence hit. But when I feel caught in her emotional intensity, I feel myself rejecting her, being angry with her for all of the things she brings up in me. I find myself blaming her for how I respond to her anger and impatient with her emotional fragility. I find myself overwhelmed by my efforts, once again, to tolerate the intolerable, to change myself into someone who can be what I need to be for someone else, until that no longer works. My solution in the past has been to mentally disengage or physically leave. This time, though, I can't run away.